to your screen today. Good morning, my beautiful budding bakers, on a glorious Sunday morning. I'm back after a lovely little break. So I had a lovely bank holiday weekend, followed by another Sunday off. So I decided I was going to do something absolutely delectable, delicious, and for all those amazing celiacs that are out there, it is Celiac Awareness Week this week. So the recipe I'm going to do, I'm not using gluten-free flour today, but I will include the recipe in relation to gluten-free because these are the most divine white chocolate blondies. Have a look at these delicious boys on the plate. They are an absolute amazing little treat for tiny tots. Now, the reason they are in tiny squares is because they were so good. I had 3 squares left and had to chop them into small pieces to make some sort of a display. So they were so good, my kids devoured them. So, one of the secret ingredients, and this is because, this is a shout out for you, Laura, because I am going to tell everyone. So I have gone through so many recipes in relation to blondies and trying to get, blondies are basically chocolate brownies, but they are blonde because you're using a light brown sugar and of course you're using white chocolate. And the other thing, of course, you use is melted butter. Now, I had my pan on in the back and I melted my butter in the pan, not in the microwave, because I was just doing other bits and pieces. And of course, doorbell rings, washing machine on, and what's that lovely smell? The butter. But I'm telling you, I've done it twice now just to see was it a once off. This is melted butter just getting to the stage where it's sort of butter brown. So the brown sugar or the brown butter is almost caramelly. I cannot tell you the smell of butterscotch from this butter because I have left it bubble away for about 5 minutes, let it go cold, and it's in its liquid form. That's what I'm going to use to make the white blondies. So I've always used soft butter. I've beaten in caster sugar. Then with the experimenting, because the time off, I had experiments, I'm just going to get cracking. So as you can see, the reason I am stacking as well is to show you the tower of these amazing containers. So any container will do, but the fact that they're all stacked, boom, 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 one on top of the other, makes it very easy for kids to bake. So to start off with, we have got 280 grams of brown sugar, and in that goes. Now it's the type of brown sugar that's quite squidgy. So if you want to have a look, it's quite soft. So it's not the granular kind, and this one I got inside in Dunnes Stores. It's lovely, it's squidgy, and it's just a gorgeous brown sugar. To that, I'm adding my melted butter. So in goes 170 grams of melted salted butter. So I have salted butter that goes in here. Now, if we're going to do this gluten-free, I bump up the quantity of the butter to about 250 grams of butter because it does make a big difference to gluten-free bakes. You need a sloppier batter when it comes to these blondies for gluten-free because the wetter the batter, the better for gluten-free. So again, we've got our lovely sand. The smell already is like butterscotch because I'm just using, and this is the other thing too, I'm not using a mixer, I'm using a trusty fork and my bowl. Now in goes a tablespoon, and this is important because I want that lovely vanilla toffee butterscotch yum into that flavour of the blondies. And again, I'm just giving it a mix, followed by 2 beautiful Farmsy free-range eggs. So in they go. Now normally I would have had the eggs cracked already, but again, clean as you go. So much easier. So all I'm doing is the skipping rope. Remember, lads? So if they're kids, get them to do the skipping rope. I love toffee, I love cream, I love anything sweet on a Sunday morning, and just keep skipping. And as you're skipping, you are creating this gorgeous, lovely, creamy, butterscotchy, deliciousness all in a bowl. And look at that. So you literally have this gorgeous butterscotch glue. My terminology this morning. So what I have got my flour. So I have 225 grams of plain flour. Now, what I do want is I want these blondies to rise a little. Most brownies themselves will have the volume of whisked egg whites. We're not doing this in the white blondies, so I do need to have a little bit of a lift in relation to our beautiful blondies. So in goes a teaspoon of baking powder. If you were doing gluten-free, you will also need a teaspoon of baking powder. Gluten-free, you will need the flour bumped up to about 280 of your gluten-free flour. You also need to add a 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum. So I'm giving this a stir, stir, stir with my trusty palette knife. This has been sieved, so for any foreign bodies, so there's nothing in this that will add an extra bit of protein. No dead flies or bugs in my flour, thankfully. Now I'm going to change from the fork to the spatula. And again, I'm just going to give it a stir. Have a look there, Sophie, so you can see the consistency of the dough. Or the batter even. This is not a dough. But you can see this gorgeous caramel, soft, delicious batter. And again, sprinkle in our flour. You can see how easy this is in relation to kids. Clean as you go. Clean as you go. Clump, clump, clump. One of the things I cannot stand is having too much clutter. So we are now left with our flour. We have got our absolutely divine caramel melted brown butter. And this is where, can you see, just before I mix it completely, I am adding 200 grams of white Belgian chocolate. Go big or go home. Followed by 75 grams of fudge pieces. And the fudge pieces were tiny fudge bars that I got in Aldi, and I just chopped them into pieces because there's something ridiculous like 50 or 60 cents for a full bag, whereas if you get these tiny little toffee chips that are specifically for baking, they're about 170. They're nearly 3 or 4 times the cost. Now, can you see what we have? I have an 8-inch lined tin. 8-inch lined tin. How simple is this for kids to do? And in goes our brownie mix. This is a fudgy batter. It is a sticky batter. It's not really a runny batter. So one of the things when you're putting it into the tin is that as you're sort of pressing it down to compress it, it will rise in the oven. So it'll be delicious. So you look at this and you think that it's quite heavy. And as I'm pushing it into the corners, just have a quick look there, you'll see that it's quite flat in relation to the height of the cake. Or height of the cake tin rather. Don't panic because this is going to rise up. I have got my oven preheated behind me and that is at 170. Now I have tried and messed around just in relation to the temperature of these brownies because I've done so many brownies, but they are delicious. So the temp that I have is 170. If you have a fan, I would nearly go 160 because it's normally sort of, if you have 160 fan, it'll go up to 180, but I've played around with the temps. So 160 fan, it'll work. And then 170, I'm putting it into my oven for about 28 minutes. 28 minutes. But you have to be aware as well of your own oven because everyone's oven is different. So keep an eye on it. Check on it at 25 minutes. So when it comes out of the oven, it'll look like a raised cake. It'll smell like a giant cookie. It will have a crust. It is not like your traditional chocolate dark brownie. This is a white blondie. So as you can see, it is laden with white chocolate chips. So when that goes into the oven, it will rise up. It will have a uniform and level top. And if you were to tap it with your tip of your finger, you'll hear a tap, 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 crunch, 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 crunch. It has a crunchy top and you think you've overbaked it. You haven't. You need to leave this rest when it comes out of the oven for at least 2 to 3 hours if you're going to devour it. But my top tip is put it in the fridge after it's cooled down for 2 to 3 hours. It makes a dream to cut and it's even fudgier. So this is going into my oven at 170 or 160 fan. In it goes, and I'm putting mine on for 28 minutes. So the 28 minutes, if it's at 160, it will take 30 minutes, but you need to keep an eye on it. So what you don't want is you don't want the wibble, 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 wibble. So the traditional brownie will have a wibble, wibble, wibble in the center of your tin. These are white blondies. They're very different in structure. They will not have a wibble as such. The only way you can test it is by tapping the top and you'll feel a jiggle. Leave it go completely cold. Do not even attempt to cut it. Added bonus, if you're really strong-willed, put it into the fridge for 2 hours. If you put it into the fridge for 2 hours, what comes out are these slight crunchy skin on the top of these blondies with this squidgy, fudgy, delicious white chocolateness. It is absolutely divine. But I will put the recipe up for the gluten-free, and just be aware with cross-contamination with gluten-free is that if you are doing these for somebody who's a celiac, you obviously need separate equipment, separate bowls. Do it first thing in the morning so you don't have that cocaine dust of flour in your kitchen. So try to keep aware of the celiacs that are out there in relation to their diet. It is Celiac Awareness Week for the whole week. I shall put up with the recipe along with the gluten-free recipe for the white blondies. They are worth their weight in delicious white chocolate gold. They are worth trying. So I shall see you again next Sunday at 10.